Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over the RLCS announcement for the 2024 season. Now, not gonna lie, this one was a little bit controversial, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Just going over all of this, I am going to just go over a very objective approach to this at first, and then I'm going to go over my personal thoughts of pros and cons of this format. And so looking at the format, we can see that there are some big changes. First of all, they are dropping it from 3 majors down to 2 before a world championship. This is something that we honestly expected. We've been hearing a lot that they were planning on just shortening the season from January to September. This seems to be very true. We'll go over the full schedule down at the bottom of this, but it does mean that we are only going to have 2 majors. Now, a big thing about it is that now to qualify for the majors, there's no more regionals. There's something similar, but it's much more open now, and this is going to be very interesting because there are no guaranteed spots in the regionals anymore. Before, you had 8 teams that automatically made it to the main event, 8 teams that automatically made it to a closed qualifier, and everyone else had to fight for it. Now everyone's in the open qualifier. So that means that you're going to have G2 Stride playing against some Champ 3 players in the open qualifier. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do this. And then they're going to eventually whittle it down. So the top 16 teams from the open qualifier will then move on to a Swiss elimination. And then the top 8 teams from that will be in a single elimination bracket from there. So it seems like basically it's just everyone's in the open qualifier, and then you have a Swiss into a single elimination bracket as basically the main event every single time. And as before, RLCS points are going to be given to everyone. It seems including the open qualifiers, so that'll be interesting. I don't know if teams that don't even make top 16 will get any points, but that will definitely be interesting. And then the top teams from the I'm going to still call them splits because that's still essentially what they are, will make it to the major, where they actually slightly changed the teams going. There's still 16 teams, same as before, but only 4 teams from North America and Europe are going. They instead push those spots over to a second Middle Eastern team, which a lot of people have been asking for, as well as 1 Sub-Saharan team, which is a region that originally got a little bit of attention. Then RLCS kind of just threw them off to the side until Worlds, and now they are back at the majors. And the majors are going to be very similar in format to before. It's just 16 team Swiss to top 8, where a single elimination bracket of the top 8 will decide. So the exact same as every single qualifier for the major. It's just the same thing without the open qualifier part. And then you have the World Championships, where it seems like there's no wild card this time. That obviously they could always make a little bit of a change when they get closer to it, but as of right now, it's just the exact same 16 for North America, for Europe, 2 from Middle East, Oceania, and South America, 1 from APAC and Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a lot fewer teams than before. Definitely a lot fewer. I think it was 24 teams before, between both the ones that made the main event of Worlds and the wild card. Now it's just down to 16. And then we get to some actually decent changes here. They're changing pricing a decent amount. Before, you had to make it to the main event of a regional in order to get pricing. Now the top 128 of both North America and Europe will get pricing for their regionals, so you don't even have to make it through the open qualifiers fully to start getting pricing. This could be pretty good for some of those middle of the pack players. And of course, something that has been a large topic for the last month when they announced it in late December is that 13-year-olds now can play in the RLCS. Before it was 15. A lot of people were actually asking them to raise it. Instead, they lowered it down to 13, probably to align with the 13-year-old age that they have with Fortnite. And the good news is that any minor that makes it to a LAN event is going to have some parent or guardian there. So it seems like hopefully they are adding that, because I know previously we've heard anecdotes from both parents and event staff that there has been like one guardian per team, which could have been troublesome, but it seems like they're actually making it a little bit better. And coaches and managers now have to be 18 years old. So that's kind of a secondary guardian, I'm assuming, for all these teams. And then getting to the schedule. The first RLCS major, I'm going to call this the spring split still, because it's basically the entire spring, uh, is going from January 26th. That's the start of Open Qualifier 1, all the way to what seems to be mid to late March for the major. We don't have any news on the major yet, which I'm kind of surprised about. Before, they used to announce when where the first major was, at least, even if they didn't give an exact date. So I'm kind of shocked that they haven't given us any information on that, because we're only 2 months out from the first major. You'd think that they would start giving information out, because traveling is pretty hard. And then you have a little bit of a transfer window into what I'm calling the summer split, which is happening from late April, starting at April 19th, all the way to, seems to be mid-June, roughly. And then we're getting a massive break from mid-June to September. There's nothing. And then we'll have Worlds. So there's going to be an entire roughly month and a half to 2 month break of RLCS before Worlds. The good news about this is that all the pro players from all the different regions have plenty of time to get their visas in. I'm assuming that's why that it's separated so much, is so that way visas don't become an issue for players or the talent, because we've also had EU talent not be able to make any majors before because of visas. So I'm hoping that's the reason why. And I'm hoping that they add some content in the middle of that, either promoting some, second tier tournaments like they've done on this offseason. But it does mean that after the World Championship, we're probably not going to see RLCS again until January of the following year. And so now we can really get into what I think are the pros and cons of this. Pros, first of all, the Middle Eastern and Sub-Saharan African communities now get better representation. You're going to see 2 MENA teams at every major, which is very good for them, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa finally getting a team back into the major. This should definitely help boost their skill at least a little bit. It's always good to have at least 2 teams go to a major, because now the one team that does go is kind of going to have a skill gap against all the other teams of their region, because they're the only ones getting experience against these other high-level rosters of the world. Second thing is that a lot more players are going to get prizing. This can be really helpful for, those middle of the pack teams that only make 1 or 2 regionals in previous formats. They're going to basically be making money every single qualifier. We don't know how much, so it might only be, a few $1,000s, but that's still a pretty big amount, and that should help push the amount of competitiveness that these teams are having, since basically everyone is open to getting money at this point. And going along with that is smaller orgs now have more opportunities. Open qualifiers are notorious for having these really big upsets, especially because when you're having such long brackets, you're generally going to be seeing best of 3 matches. And I remember even seeing back in RLCS Season 3, the Muffin Men. That was Torment, Gimmick, and Lichinio. Really massive roster. Everyone was expecting to make it through easy peasy. Didn't even make RLCS League play. And that's the kind of thing that we could potentially see, as these smaller orgs sign players, and then those players could go on a tear on a single day, make it all the way to, the Swiss bracket, and then everyone's talking about them. They're talking about the players. They're talking about the org. That could be really good advertisement for those players. And then similar to that, as I was talking about, those powerhouse teams can get upset. This just leads to more content, more storylines, but it also leads to a very big con, which is large orgs now have less reason to actually invest in Rocket League. Before, you had these invitational spots of top 8. You were guaranteed to be in those spots. Those teams knew that. Now, the orgs have no idea when their teams are actually going to make it all the way. You could see a team like Genji, G2, Carmine Corps, Vitality. If they have one bad day, then they're out of that qualifier, which is big news. And it's going to be really bad for the org because of it, because now they don't have that guaranteed top 8, top 16. And alongside that, only 4 teams from North America and EU are going to majors. You've just made it even harder for these orgs to want to invest in North American and European teams, because only roughly 4 to 8 of these teams are actually going to be making it far enough. And you have to make a major to make worlds, which means that, yeah, only between 4 and 8 teams are even going to have the opportunity to make it to worlds. That means that you're going to see, 4 to 8 big orgs sign in North America and Europe. The rest of them are kind of going to say, what's the point? We're not making majors. We don't even have the possibility to make worlds if we don't have majors. What's the point in even signing these players anymore? That could be pretty detrimental. Alongside that, obviously we have the 4 lands down to 3. That just makes it, a little worse for simultaneously the players and the viewers. Viewers love being able to go to these majors. I'm assuming that we'll go back to seeing just one in the west coast of the US, one in the east coast of the US, and then one in Europe. Since we had worlds in Europe before, I'm assuming that it will be like US East for first major, Europe for second major, and then US West for worlds is my prediction for this upcoming year. And then a big thing is that 13-year-olds are able to play now. This could be really bad, in all honesty. Having these 13-year-olds go to majors, go to these massive events, could cause big problems for them, for their parents, and for Rocket League as a whole. For one, viewers can't really connect to 13-year-olds. Only the younger viewers can, but a majority of RLCS viewers are between the ages of 18 and 25. They're not going to connect with a 13-year-old. They're going to connect with these older players, and that's going to be much harder for them. As I said before, there's been anecdotes from both parents of players as well as event staff that there just hasn't been enough support for these players. Parents weren't able to go before. It was only like one player or one parent or guardian per team could go, and oftentimes that would just go to a coach or manager. It seems like now they've at least addressed that at least a little bit, but how are these 13-year-olds supposed to cope with going to a major, playing in front of thousands of people, and then most likely losing at some point that they're statistically likely to lose? How are they supposed to cope with that? Is Psyonix and Epic and Rocket League supposed to address this? How are they supposed to support these players that are going through monumental moments of their life? I mean, there's going to be psychological, mental, emotional stress upon these players. I'm hoping that there is some kind of professional help for them at these events, some kind of psychologist of some kind, just for them to have that release to. Otherwise, it could be really hard on them. And then also, 13-year-olds have school. I mean, so do high schoolers, but we're talking about like 8th graders, 7th graders playing in these. And if we look at the schedule, it's going to be Friday through Sunday of every week. But I can't imagine that these 13-year-olds are going to be properly prioritizing their school, their health, their social lives alongside constant play, where they're going to be playing once every 2 weeks to once every single week. That's going to be actually crazy to have to deal with. And I have noticed that it seems like North America and Europe, they haven't said that there's any difference in dates, where I would have expected, North America to have their, Swiss and single image breaker 1 week, and then Europe the next week, and like back and forth between North America and Europe. They haven't said anything. So it sounds like it's going to be the same weekend for every region, which is kind of wild in all honesty. And then the last final bit is the fact that we are very likely to see a long off season, as well as a long break between the second major and worlds. I mean, Psyonix and Epic have to invest in other tournaments during this time, because you're going to be seeing 4 or 5 months where we're not going to be having RLCS. We need to have other Rocket League content, both for the players to be making money, for the talent to be making money, such as the casters, the producers, the analytics people. Everyone needs jobs during that time. Um, but I also don't think that this is necessarily a con. As long as Psyonix invests in these other tournaments during the off season, honestly, it could be good for everyone because of the fact that traditional sports already do this. They only, work half of the year, and then the other half of the year they have time off. Obviously, they're being paid millions of dollars to do this, but it's good to have time off to really be able to recover. My biggest issue with the format of the COVID era between 2020 and 2022 was the fact that it was just nonstop Rocket League for 10 months on end. And burnout was a serious issue for a lot of players, for a lot of viewers, for talent, everyone like that. So it's good to see a break, but I'm hoping that, there's some A tier, B tier tournaments happening in that offseason. I think that will make it absolutely fine to have such a long break, as well as obviously communicating. Communication has been such a big issue for the RLCS that I'm just hoping that we see something a little bit better. And then one other thing that I actually forgot about is that all broadcasts are going to be happening on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and in-game in Fortnite. So hopefully we're going to see a lot more RLCS viewership increase. I'm hoping to see it maybe reach 600,000 by Worlds this year. Generally, we're sitting around 400, 450 as a peak. I'm really hoping that we push it 600, 750K. I doubt we're getting to 1 million, but we can hope. That is it for this announcement, guys. I'm going to be doing a lot more RLCS content as well as CRL content as we get that moving forward. So make sure to subscribe down below to keep track of all that. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.